Today we get to start a brand new series, and I'm so excited for this. We're calling it Feeling Human, something we can all relate to. Every single one of us walked in feeling human today. And what that means is we have to learn to walk with God, who equipped us to be human, and we're going to figure that out together in this next series. And I can't wait to introduce you to Jonathan today, who's going to be kicking off this series. Jonathan is, he served the local and the global church for the past 23 years, and he still looks incredibly young. So that's really cool. And get this, he's worked bivocationally early on. He was an ER trauma nurse and a youth and worship pastor, which kind of seems like the same job description. He's a licensed attorney in California. And actually met Jonathan before him and his wife Elizabeth went to Cambodia, where they served on the mission field for 8 years. And I met him because he was pouring his heart out to high school students, and we spent a week together. And I just remember thinking, that's one very genuine, passionate person, human. And have invited him to come and speak today. Currently, he lives in Joplin, Missouri. They have 4 kids, ranging from 13 to 20. So they're getting close, getting close. Currently, he's completing his master's degree in clinical mental health counseling from Colorado Christian University, and he works with Team Expansion, and he provides pastoral care and empathetic coaching, and as well as working towards counseling in many occasions with people on the mission field and just whomever needs help. And he's a very passionate individual and talented. Him and his wife have co-authored several things, written 2 books. He's been featured in some different publications, an excellent writer, an even better person. You are in for a treat. Okay, so if you would you help me give a warm first Christian welcome to Mr. Jonathan Trotter.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. Good morning. How are you? All right. Hey, it's good to be here. It is such a privilege. It is such a privilege to be with the people of God. I have not gotten over it. I spent a lot of time in Cambodia talking to international groups, international churches, but most of my time, my day job has been for the last 10 years or so, sitting in a counseling room one-on-one or one-on-two with people. And you can't do that for very long if your eyes are open without seeing the depths of the human heart. And that also means seeing the depths of human pain and suffering. It also means sometimes you get to see the rebirth of life. Sometimes in that counseling room, you get to see hope beginning to just shoot up through the cracks of the ground. And that is just beautiful. I wouldn't do the job if I didn't think healing weren't possible. But healing is possible. In bits and bits and bits. I tell people sometimes God provides healing for our emotional wounds and stuff. Sometimes it's like a crashing wave and the healing comes in and it's just all there. And sometimes it's more of a drip, drip, drip. Sometimes healing is a slow process, much slower than we would like it to be. But the point is, healing happens. And healing is possible. And as believers, as people who come to the Word of God, who come to the church, boy, we have to be able to say, I'm going to bring my whole self to each other, to one another. I'm going to bring my whole self to God. That's scary, though. That authenticity is scary, and sometimes it feels shameful. And then the Psalms happen. And the Psalms are where we're going today, and I have 2 tasks, basically, to talk a little bit about emotions, which I love talking about. In Cambodia, people called me the grief guy. Yay! I want to be the grief guy. But I had a sister who died when I was 6, 7 years old. My mother got sick with cancer and died when I was 17. She was diagnosed when she was pregnant with my little brother and then died within the year. My dad got brain cancer and died when I was 21, 22. And I worked in the ER trauma room. I got blood on my shoes all the time, watched a lot of people die, watched some people go to the ICU. And then we lived in Cambodia, where, like a lot of developing countries, the pain and suffering is right out there in the open. Americans have pain and suffering too, I know that. in developing worlds, it's just more in your face because they don't have the resources to cover it up as much. So I'm well aware of the depths of the human heart, and it's my privilege to sit with people as we dive into the depths of the human heart. And I'm just going to tell you right now, the Psalms have saved my life in Cambodia. And I believe that it's worth our time to care about the Psalms. Through the history of the church, the Psalms have been it. We'll look at some of what theologians have said about the Psalms, but the Psalms are it. If you leave here with nothing other than, you know what, I think maybe I'll read a couple Psalms this week. Great. Spend some time in the Psalms. They have been the lifeblood of the church for thousands of years, and Jesus liked them a lot too. Okay, does that sound fun? So we'll talk about emotions. We'll talk about the Psalms. Are you with me? All right, I think we could try it. I think it would be fun. So as we start talking about the roller coaster of the Psalms, let me ask you this. Raise your hand if you love roller coasters. If you're the kind of person that loves roller coasters, raise your hand. Okay. All right, the rest of you look around. Watch out for those people. Those people are crazy. Okay. No, I used to love roller coasters. I'll say that. I used to love roller coasters. But if you could, think of your favorite ride, those of you who raise your hand, your favorite ride or roller coaster, and turn to the next person and say what it is. If you don't like roller coasters, turn to the person and say why you don't like roller coasters. All right, go for it. Favorite ride or why you don't like roller coasters. It's fun. You like roller coasters? Okay, yeah, definitely. There's so much excitement. Oh, I love it. I used to love roller coasters. We lived in Cambodia. My oldest was turning 13, and I said, hey, what do you want to do? And he goes, well, I've never been on a roller coaster. And I was like, I am a horrible father. But we lived in Southeast Asia. And so I said, how about we go to Thailand, which is a short 30-minute flight, and go to an amusement park. So I took him to Bangkok for his 13th birthday, and we went to this amusement park, which was amazing. Siam Park was the name of it. We weren't even sure it was open when we arrived because there were like 4 cars in the parking lot. And I was like, I think this place has roller coasters. They did have roller coasters. Kind of looked like that one. And nobody else was there except for, a few people running some of the rides. It was amazing. And his first time on a roller coaster, we got seated in one. We were the only people on the roller coaster. And we went and we did it. And I was like, sweet. And he was like, I want to do it again. So we just looked, sometimes they make you get out and walk around. Not in Thailand. We just looked at the guy. We don't know Thai. We didn't speak Thai, but we looked at the person running the thing and we're just like, which is a universal signal for like, let's go again. And so we did. And then we did it again and again. And again, and again, and about the 6th or 7th time, no lie, the 6th or 7th time, I was like, dude, I'm out. I am out. And I got my stuff, and I recovered, and he did it like 5 more times. And every ride at that park was like that. One of those that like goes up and then just drops you 300 feet, same thing. Run it again, and do it again. I was like, dude, he did that ride 15 times in a row. I said, you've never been to an amusement park before. Now you've been to one like 15 times. And it costs like $10. So roller coasters are fun until they're not fun. And some people love them. Some people hate them. But that's kind of like the Psalms. It's kind of like emotions. Have you ever met somebody who just loves emotions? They feel big feelings? Raise your hand if you're that person. You're like, hey, can I? Yeah. Raise your hand if you know someone who doesn't like feelings. And they're like, I'd rather not. Yeah. My wife and I got married, and she was in engineering school, and so we lived in Rolla. My son is there now as a mechanical engineer, and anytime we talk about feelings, my son, love him. He feels big things. He's always like, yeah, Dad, rather not talk about feelings. Yeah, because sometimes some people are wired differently, and that's totally fine, totally fine. The reality is, though, that life, you can't really opt out of the roller coaster that is living. The good news is, as believers, we have access to the Psalms, which show us what to do on that roller coaster of life. So here we go, buckle up. N.T. Wright, I want to read a quote here from N.T. Wright, British theologian, wrote this about the Psalms. See if you resonate. He said, the celebration is wild and uninhibited. Yeah, yay, we're going up. The misery is deep and horrible. One moment we are chanting, perhaps clapping our hands in time, even stamping our feet. The next moment we have tears running down our cheeks, and we want the earth to open up and swallow us. Does that sound like life? Sometimes, yeah, absolutely. If we're paying attention, that sounds like our life, and it sounds like the lives of people around us. Main point here in the Psalms is that the Psalms will not help you as a church or as individuals. The Psalms will not help you to be super Christians. So I'm so excited that your church is going into the Psalms. I feel like churches should spend a lot more time in the Psalms if they want to be emotionally whole and healthy. The Psalms, though, will not help you to be a super Christian. The Psalms will help you to be a human Christian. Like Jesus. All right? The Psalms will not help you to be a super Christian. Say this with me. The Psalms will not help you be a super Christian. The Psalms will help you be a human Christian. That's what they do. And that's how the church has used the Psalms for a long, long time. We don't get into them very much. We do an occasional sort of pastoral glance at Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. Absolutely. We glance at the beautiful Psalm 139. You knit me together. Absolutely. Those are beautiful passages. I love those. And they're good and they're amazing. We need them. We need the soaring beauty of Psalm 145. I actually want us to read it together. Parts of Psalm 145. If you could, read this with me. I will exalt you, my God and King, and praise your name forever and ever. I will praise you every day. Yes, I will praise you forever. Great is the Lord. He is most worthy of praise. No one can measure his greatness. Let each generation tell its children of your mighty acts. Let them proclaim your power. I will meditate on your majestic, glorious splendor and your wonderful miracles. Your awe-inspiring deeds will be on every tongue. I will proclaim your greatness. Everyone will share the story of your wonderful goodness. They will sing with joy about your righteousness. The Lord is merciful and compassionate, slow to get angry, and filled with unfailing love. Yeah, woohoo! And sometimes we feel that. I was a worship leader. I led worship nearly every Sunday for 7 years. Sometimes I felt like singing and leading God's people in worship. I felt happy and joyful and just super excited. But sometimes I did not. Sometimes I did not. We need that. But the Psalms also show us sort of the depths of misery. And I'm going to ask you, because we don't do this very often, I'm going to ask you to stand with me and read this next passage. Psalm 31. Read this along with me. And again, you might not be feeling this right now, and that's fine. The point of emotional wholeness, or the point of the Psalms, is not that you have to feel anything. You don't have to feel happy. You also don't have to feel sad. That's not the point. But if you do feel either of any of the emotions, the Psalms are there for you. All right? Psalm 31, read this with me. I have cried my eyes out. I feel hollow inside. My life leaks away, groan by groan. My years fade out in sighs. My troubles have worn me out. They've turned my bones to powder. To my enemies, I'm a monster. I'm ridiculed by the neighbors. My friends are horrified. They cross the street to avoid me. They want to blot me from memory, forget me like a corpse in the grave. Discard me like a broken dish in the trash. The street talk gossip has me criminally insane. It's like a bad Taylor Swift lyric. Can I say that here? Is that okay? He said I could say that here. And I was like, well, I have a blank space, so maybe I'll write that in. Anyway, you have a seat. Have a seat. Thank you. This stuff is crazy. The Psalms are all over the place. But so are we, right? In life. We feel all the feelings because we're human. The good news is Jesus did too, and he stayed the course. It is possible to feel feelings and stay the course. We don't have to bury them. We don't have to stuff them. We don't have to discard them. We don't have to be afraid of our children's feelings or our spouse's feelings. We can be followers of Christ. We can be fully human. The Psalms show us the way. And I'm so grateful for them. The psalmists, they weren't scaredy cats, anxious all the time, but they were sometimes scared. They weren't just sobbing piles of emotion, but they sometimes cried. They weren't angry men, but they sometimes demanded sovereign revenge. They got depressed. They sang, they wept, they danced, and they prayed. The Psalms are amazing. And they're horrible. Can I just say that? I'm so glad you guys are doing it. The Psalms are horrible, and they're life-giving. And there are times in our lives when we just need the Psalms. Maybe we need them because they give voice to our praise. Maybe we need them because they give voice to our pain, and we don't know what else to do with our pain. Well, the Psalms have got you there too. Okay. A word about emotions. Not all people like emotions, like we mentioned before. Like I said, I've done pastoral counseling and clinical counseling now for a bit. I had a client in Cambodia who, I love this guy so much because we became friends in Cambodia too. And early on in our sessions together, he said, he said like this. He goes, Jonathan, Jesus did not have emotions. Note to self, that's probably what we're going to need to talk about, is the belief that Jesus didn't have emotions. He really believed that. And sometimes people really believe that the ideal Christian is completely numb emotionally all the time. And can I disaffect you from that? That is not true, and that is not healthy. And good luck doing that anyway. Because in order to do that, you just are going to have to numb and hide all of your emotions because you're human, so you can't just erase them just like that because you think God says you're supposed to. I can't do that very well. I posted something on Facebook. You know, everything's nice on Facebook. And I posted something on Facebook once about feelings or emotions, and a guy commented, and he goes, all that coming from a male nurse, ... And I was like, ER trauma nurse, come on. But also, that says more about you than it does about me. I'm okay with my role and my masculinity, whatever. But where do we get this idea that men couldn't feel things? That's a very, very cultural thing. And maybe you don't have that here. Hopefully, I think churches should be a place where men can also feel feelings. But men do have feelings. Have you ever met Australian guys? They have tons of feelings. Okay, but do you see what I'm saying? So much of that is cultural, and we're God's people. By the way, have you ever been to an NFL game or watched Travis Kelce? I mean, these guys have emotions. I had a client once a couple that were in for counseling, and the guy's like, I don't do emotions. I don't do emotions at all. And you're like, I know one emotion that you do. And his wife's like, he does that one really well. That's why we're here. He's just super angry all the time. Anger is an emotion. You just don't do emotions well. But you do emotions. So talking about emotions, I want to give some tools. But then the Psalms as a whole, the Psalms are a giant tool to help us with our emotional world. Okay? Oh, sorry. I get all emotional about that. I do get, though, that emotions can be scary. And a lot of clients that I have had, when they were afraid of emotions, they have a really good reason to be afraid of emotions. And I want to give you some grace here because a lot of people who are terrified of their own emotions or other people's emotions are terrified because they've been really hurt by out-of-control emotions. So that could be they were really hurt by somebody who had out-of-control anger. Now, anger is not the same thing as aggression. I want to make sure that we're really clear here. You can feel angry, Jesus did, without acting aggressively. This is not a free pass. Well, I'm just angry. Jonathan said that anger is good. I'm like, yeah, anger is good. Aggression might not be. There's a difference. There's a huge difference. Okay? Anger and aggression. And I was going to say something, I forgot. Oh, yeah. So you may have been hurt by somebody with out of control anger that then led to aggression or abusive behavior. And I'm sorry if that's been part of your story. That shouldn't have happened. You might have felt very abandoned as a child because a parent had untreated other stuff, maybe untreated depression. Oh, that's a really, really hard thing. I have clients all the time who they hate emotions because they've experienced really negative things from other people or from themselves where emotions were not, they didn't have any tools to handle them, and that can be a thing. One of the chapters in the book Digging in the Dirt out there is a chapter on anger, saying Gandalf, it uses Gandalf and why we need more anger, better anger, more pointed anger. I think Aristotle said, to be angry at the right thing, in the right amount, in the right way is wisdom. And that's true. If I have a client who comes in and is telling me how they were abused as a child, I am not afraid anymore to say, I am so sorry that happened. I am angry that happened to you. That should not have happened to you. And I have sat with people, victims of abuse or trauma, who needed somebody. They needed an older man. You said I look young. I'm bald. But they need somebody to say, I am so angry that happened to you. That should not have happened to you. It should not have happened to you. It's not the way it's supposed to be. Anger can be very purifying. It can be very healing even for folks. But so can grief. So can joy. The full spectrum of human emotions is what the Psalms show us. That's where we're going. Okay? If we were sitting one-on-one right now, I would say, okay, take a deep breath. That was a lot. Take a deep breath. How are you feeling? I love hate talking about emotions. I really do. Because this is hard stuff. Because you have felt them and I have felt them. In the end, though, emotions are Christ-like. Or at least they can be. Just like our intellect is Christ-like, or at least it can be. We're in the journey of being reformed and changed and transformed in our minds and our hearts, right? So emotions and our intellect can be used and healed and transformed by God to bring healing and insight and the gospel to the world around us. It gets a little scary. I think that's why we don't talk about the Psalms very much in a lot of our tradition. And I'm so excited for you guys, because the Psalms will show us the path. All right, let me give you a tool for emotions, and then I'm going to try to really make the case for the Psalms. All right, let's look at this. Aww. It's a hedgehog. It's a baby hedgehog. Anybody? Oh, let's all collectively sigh. Oh, no, they're not really that cute. I agree. But Emily Nagoski wrote about emotions as hedgehogs. They skedaddle into our lives. I don't know if that's the right word. They come into our lives whether we want to or not. If we try to kill them or if we try to pressure them or whatever, they're a little spiky and we might get hurt. So the idea with emotions in the Psalms, but also in our own hearts, is to be gentle and curious. And when that emotional hedgehog comes over to our laps, I've had clients who've they've gone out and purchased toy hedgehogs to remind us of this. So you guys can do that, have them to hand out, stress toys. No, to remember that emotion is information, and we want to get curious about this emotion that I'm feeling right now. With our children's emotions, maybe with our spouse's emotions as well. That's hard sometimes when our relatives' emotions or friends' emotions are scary to us. Get curious, hold it, and then know that if we pay attention to it, it will scamper off. If we give it air, here's the thing. Allow our emotions, identify them for what they really are, and then respond to them. This is a very, very simple tool, but I teach it to clients all the time. So let me just walk through this. Allow emotions. Allow all the emotions. Now remember, that doesn't mean that a person gets to do whatever they want with the emotion, but they're allowing themselves to feel what's actually there. Does that make sense? You're going to allow yourself to feel feelings, period. Identify them. You've got to hand out the feelings wheel, and they're going to show it up on the board too, but if you didn't grab one on your way out. Love this. Most of us only use the words in the middle. I'm angry, I'm sad, happy, hungry. Hungry should have its own category. But identifying is not just, well, I'm angry. Identifying is saying, okay, is there any word there that's more specific? Because the R stands for respond, and I need to be able to respond to the specific emotion that I'm feeling. If I'm just like, I'm angry, well, how do I respond to that? I'm not really sure. Are there any other specifics? I had a client in Cambodia. I had an 11 or 12-year-old boy. He was not American, and only 11 or 12, but he was bright, had a huge English vocabulary, and his parents wanted him to meet with me because he was really angry. Okay, 11, 12-year-old boy who's really angry. Fine. What are we going to do with that? And I don't know. So I gave him a copy of this, and I said, all right, we know you're angry. You say that you feel angry. Your parents say that you're angry. Your sister says you're angry. Are there any other words that feel accurate? And he looked at this for a second, and he goes, yeah, violated. Okay. Well, if you feel violated, it makes sense that you feel angry. But that's a whole different discussion that we're going to have, right? The 11-year-old boy who feels violated is going to be a different conversation than someone who's just angry. Does that make sense? So do this with yourself and with others. Read the Psalms. We'll talk about this in a little bit. Read the Psalms and look in the feelings wheel. What emotions do you see there? How do we respond to the specific thing? Not just sadness, maybe it's abandoned. Not just anger, maybe it's violated. And then R, respond. So give emotions air. A stands for allow, identify, respond. Here's a cheat sheet. Here with me, here we go. A stands for allow the emotions, identify them, and respond to them. Okay. Sometimes pain erases language. The depths of pain. Sometimes the depths of, or the heights of happiness also erases language. We don't know what to say. We're overwhelmed emotionally, and our brain can't think. Our frontal brain is offline because our emotional brain is going big on either side of the emotional world. The Psalms, though, can give us back our words, especially when it comes to pain and lament. So just a side note, if you're in a spot in life where you feel like it would be helpful for you to walk through some lament, which can be grief and sadness, lament can also be anger. The imprecatory psalms are sort of the angry psalms. You might want to check out a book called Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy by Mark Vrogop. Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy. Really does a great job of walking with you through biblical lament, which is anger and sadness and is pointed towards God. It's sort of doing battle with God, towards God, but with God. That's a very, very different thing. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to skip a couple things. Back to the Psalms. We're going to make the case for the Psalms. Again, we need the Psalms not because they'll teach us how to be super Christians, but because the Psalms will teach us how to be human Christians, right? All right, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, German theologian and anti-Nazi, he wrote this. Let's look at that quote. Oops. Here we go. Dietrich Bonhoeffer. So the Psalms are also called the Psalter. That's why I titled this sermon the Psalter Coaster. Next time you see a roller coaster, I want you to think about life. I want you to think about the Psalms. Can I just sort of like Inception that? That's the movie, right? Inception, just kind of like, so the next time you see a roller coaster, you think of the Psalms. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said about the Psalter coaster, whenever the Psalter is abandoned, an incomparable treasure vanishes from the Christian church. I really believe that. I've experienced that in my life, and I hope that over the next 5-6 weeks, you guys really feel that the Psalms are an incomparable treasure for you individually, but also corporately as the church. Most of the Psalms were written to be read as a body of believers or sung as the people of God. Okay, next, another Dietrich Bonhoeffer quote. He said, the Psalter impregnated the life of early Christianity. We are on solid ground. You as a church, I'm so excited for you. You're on such solid ground, such historical ground when you are looking into the Psalms. They have been speaking life into the church since the beginning. The early life of Christianity was permeated with the Psalms. Billy Graham, a more modern example, I love this. Billy Graham said, I used to read 5 Psalms every day. That teaches me how to get along with God. I read the Proverbs because that helps me get along with people. But I read the Psalms because the Psalms teach me how to get along with God. Have you ever needed help getting along with God? I preached this in the first service and I was not struck by lightning, so I see that's a green light. I think it's okay to like, oh God, why are you? Where are you? What are you doing? If I'm still talking to God about that, I am still in relationship with Him. Billy Graham, read the Psalms. They help me get along. They help me get along with God. Martin Luther said that the Psalter promises Christ's death and resurrection so clearly, and it pictures his kingdom and the condition and nature of all Christendom that it might as well be called a little Bible. Y'all, there was a time in Cambodia I had dengue fever. Some stuff had happened in my family that was really heartbreaking, and I was a missionary overseas, and I was fried spiritually. I was toast. Geez, God, where are you? What are you doing? It's a bit of a under the microscope, minister in an international church. What are you doing? I had to stop reading all other Christian books. I couldn't do it anymore. Maybe you've been in that spot. Modern worship music, I couldn't do it. It didn't speak my language, and it wasn't helpful. This made me angry. I needed something different. And I spent about a year only reading the Psalms. And then I downloaded some albums that were people singing the Psalms, just the straight Psalms. That's why I say I think the Psalms saved my life in Cambodia. I don't think I could do my job as a counselor, as a pastoral counselor to missionaries overseas without the Psalms. I don't read the Psalms in sessions, hardly ever. But for me, I know that there is a grid for a Christian to feel these feelings and then to respond to those feelings with joy and worship or lament or anger, all that stuff. I need that because I'm face to face with human pain and suffering day in and day out. And I need to know that there's some place I can put that pain. And I want you to see that if that's you, it's not going to be all of you, but if that's you, and you're like, I don't know what to do with the pain and suffering that is my story or that I'm going through right now, know that there is a container, there is a safe place to put that. And that might be in lament in the Psalms. Maybe pain has taken away all your words and you don't have anything to say. That's okay. Pray the Psalms over and over and over. Those words have been prayed by believers for thousands of years when they had no words of their own. And they're good. They are good words. I do believe strongly that repeated exposure to the Psalms, it etches into the hearts of believers a biblical response to pain and suffering. And we need that biblical response. One author talks about the Psalms show us what we do at the intersection of God's space and human life. Again, N.T. Wright said this. He said that in the middle there, they call us to live at the intersection of sacred space and the rest of human space, the world where idolatry and injustice still wreak their misery. There's a hard tension. It's a hard tension. In fact, I've been doing this for a bit. I'm in grad school right now, and I'm watching the same thing happen when I started working at the hospital in the ER. For the Christians who were beginning to work in the ER, whoa, this is trauma. How do I reconcile what I believe about God with the fact that I just watched this person die with 7 bullet holes in their chest? How do I reconcile that? But I'm watching the same thing happen with new counselors that I'm working with. They've been Christians for a long time, but now they're sitting and seeing the pain hour after hour after hour of people who are coming for counseling. And they're like, how do I hold these things in tension? The pain of the world, the injustice, the misery, and the reality of a good God, the goodness of God. What in the world? How do I mesh that? I have no idea, but I know that the Psalms provide a space to wrestle with God. The Psalms provide a space to not have all the answers about the sovereignty of God or why bad things happen to good people or any of those massive questions, the problem of suffering. The Psalms provide a space for us to come and say, God, what are you doing? Where are you? Jesus loved the Psalms, and most of the time when Jesus preached, when he quoted the psalm, it was when horrible things were happening or bad things were happening to him. He quotes the 22nd Psalm when he's dying on the cross. He quotes the Psalms when he's talking about his betrayal, when the Jews want to stone him. Over and over and over, you see Jesus quoting the Psalms. I've probably said this before, but he quoted the Psalms more than any other book in the Old Testament. There's Exodus, Isaiah, Deuteronomy, Psalms. Over and over and over, Jesus goes back to the Psalms, especially when hard things are happening in his life. So I think it might be a good idea for me to have, I was going to say Rolodex, but that sounds really old, to have a list of the Psalms in my head for when things are not going great. Then the Psalms show us the full spectrum of human emotion. From the really hard stuff to the joy, the clapping, the dancing. The Psalms show that whole spectrum. I had a Cambodian pastor I was working with once, and he said, I said, well, okay, where is a Christian supposed to be, though? And he goes, well, just in the middle, not too happy and never very sad. Okay. Does that work for you? How often do you ever feel anything that's outside that window of the window that good Christians are supposed to be? And he said all the time. His wife had been abused horribly as a child, all sorts of stuff. And he was so angry and he was so sad, all sorts of things. So he's like, he was out of that window all the time. And I said, well, what do you do when you're outside of that area of emotions you feel like God wants you to be in? And he goes, well, I certainly don't talk to God about it. And I was like, well, that's so sad. Not like, oh, what a horrible pastor that you don't know what to do with those big emotions. I was like, that is so sad that when you really need to be able to bring your full self to God, including the pain and the suffering and your closeness to your wife who went through horrific suffering, that stuff you can't talk to God about. And in Cambodia, I used the Psalms all the time because it would remove the shame of feeling these things. I was saying, let's look at this psalm. He read a psalm, and I said, have you ever felt that? Anger at the wicked people who've caused pain? And he goes, yeah, I feel it all the time. I said, do you think you're allowed to feel that? And he's like, it's in the Bible. Like, it is in the Bible. What do you do about it? Keep talking to God about it. It actually is okay. You can bring your full self to God. That's what the Psalms show us how to do. Does that sound okay to you? Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. Again, this may not resonate with all of you at every point of your life. That's okay. I don't know where you're at on the roller coaster. But remember, when you get down here or when you get up here, you might love it, you might hate it, but the Psalms are there. They are there. Use the Psalms. Look at the Psalms. Use the feelings wheel with the Psalms. Remember air. Allow emotions in yourself, in your spouse, in your children, in your friends. Allow emotions. Identify them. And then respond to them. Or with our children, part of our role as parents is to help them learn good responses, whole, healthy responses to what it is that they're feeling. Okay, we're going to wrap up here in just a minute. You want to try the Psalms? Does that sound okay to you? You're going to be in it. You're going to hear some sermons in the coming weeks on the Psalms. Experiment with air. Again, it's not about being a perfect Christian. It's about being it's not about being a perfect Christian. It's about being a A human Christian. Thank you so much. And you know what happens? You know what becomes possible when you bring your whole heart? Intimacy. Intimacy becomes possible. That's why I love working with couples as they get to like slowly become intimate with one another emotionally. It really, it just explodes things in a good way. It brings things out that's amazing with God, with one another. When we become real, when we bring our hearts to the table, intimacy now becomes possible, along with compassion and gentleness. Dallas Willard said this. He said, bury yourself in the Psalms. Bury yourself in the Psalms and you will emerge knowing God. I love that. Bury yourself. That's a challenge for y'all. Bury yourself in the Psalms. I guarantee you, you will emerge knowing yourself a little bit more, but more importantly and more beautifully, you will emerge knowing the heart of God more and more and more. How do we hold this tension though? How do we hold the reality, this intersection of God's goodness and human suffering? Okay, read a psalm, great, but how do we dance amidst the horror of real life if we've got our eyes open or watch the news? I think it's because we are able to have hope. We are people of hope, not just people of pain or people of hope. I couldn't sit with people day in and day out if I didn't believe that God was a God of hope. And that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Why? Why do we have hope? Because we know where we're going. We know we're going home. And it is goodness. It is mercy. That place is glorious and welcoming and wonderful. And of course, the gospel that we believe says, in this strange turn of fates, God has actually made his home here with us, with our hearts. He knows that we are made of dust, and he loves us because he made us, and we are his people, and he is our God. He has already made his house our house. That's how we can be people of hope in the intersection. Okay, I want to end with Psalm 23. So we have a pastoral glance of it, but it is so beautiful. So let's stand and let's read Psalm 23 together. You've heard this before. Tune into the heart of this. Tune into the emotion of this, the wonder of this. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And the church said, amen.